Hello and welcome back once again to After the Credits. Today we're talking about Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, the long-awaited sequel to Jumanji starring Robin Williams. However, Robin Williams has since passed and is not in this one. But at the same time, this movie was able to function without his presence, and you really don't even have to have seen the first one to watch this one, other than the first one establishes where the board game came from. So for those of you who don't remember, at the end of the Robin Williams version of Jumanji, they threw the board game into the river, and it washed up on a beach somewhere. And I want to say it was in another country, like Brazil or maybe even overseas somewhere, based on the people that were walking along the beach when it was kind of uncovered by the waves. Where this one starts, it basically washed up on a local beach, and a guy's jogging along and kind of trips over it, digs out of the sand and decides, oh, it's a game. I'll take it home to my son. He likes games. Except it's 1996 now, and his son likes video games instead of board games. So the kid kind of looks at it and he's like, who even plays board games anymore? And kind of sets it down on the table and goes back to playing his video games. And overnight there's some magic that happens, and he wakes up and opens up the case, and inside is a cartridge for a video game. So he pops into his game system, turns it on, and flash a light, he's gone. Cut to modern time, almost 20 years later, and we're introduced to our four main characters through, their little backstories of how they're completely different ends of the social spectrum and aren't friends at all, don't communicate with each other, so on and so forth. And they all end up in detention together, and for detention they say, well, you guys are going to clean out this room because we're going to turn it into a computer lab, so help get everything cleaned up and set up and everything. And as they're going through all the stuff in the room, they find the game system that was donated to the school, I guess, which still has the Jumanji game in it. Like, oh, what's this? And they're like, I don't know, I've never seen it before, let's try it. So they hook it up to the TV, turn it on, and all of them decide to play the game together, and the game starts spazzing out and shooting out sparks and everything, and suddenly they're all pulled into the game. So they all arrive in the game as their new avatars, who are all complete opposites of who they are in the real world. So the scrawny, nerdy kid is now The Rock. The football player is now the short, unathletic guy. The Valley Girl-esque prom queen type of popular girl is now Jack Black. And the other girl who's just kind of average is now Amy Pond. So they realize they're stuck in the game, and that the only way out is to complete the game without dying. So they're kind of directed through the path by NPCs, which I'll comment on a little bit later, but they basically kind of give them directions of where to go, and they each start to learn that they have different skills that are meant to help them through different parts of the game. So it's kind of a you all have to work together to get anywhere type of thing. And there is a backstory in the game of who the evil boss is and why everything's the way it is and why the game is being played, blah blah blah. And that's just kind of how it plays out. Eventually they meet up with the other kid who's been lost in the game for 20 years. With his help, they're able to complete the game because it needed all 5 of them, not just the 4. So they get towards the end, and they get down to where all of them pretty much only have 1 life left, and it's like, okay, well, what happens if we die now? And, is it permanent? Are we really dead? Or are we ejected from the game? Is the game over? What happens? And no one knows. So now everyone's kind of scared to do anything, and it's like, we're right at the end, we have to do something. So it's just kind of that whole overcoming your fears thing. And even the nerdy kid that's now The Rock, he's like, it's easy to be brave when you have more than 1 life to spare, but now you only have 1, and you kind of second guess everything you do. And one of the other guys tells him, that's the way it is in real life, too. If you let fear hold you back, you're never going to go anywhere or experience anything. So it's kind of like each of them starts to learn life lessons about themselves over the course of the game, how to be not who they were and how to be more understanding and tolerable of each other. And they manage to complete the game, get out, and, they're all better people for it. They all become friends, whatever. Kind of shift their lives around and start doing things that they normally wouldn't have done. And that basically wraps up the movie. Now, like I said, I was going to say something about the NPCs, and the thing is, in the Robin Williams version, he goes into the jungle for, 30 years or whatever, before the other kids roll the dice and he's able to escape. And that whole time he's in the game, he's being chased around by a hunter and so on and so forth. There's never any mention of the story that's being played out in this movie. The hunter never comes back into it, and there's no talk in Robin Williams' version of NPCs. And the reason I say that is because the NPCs in this version, they'll talk to you and they'll seem like they're actual real people and communicating, but when you ask them something, they'll just kind of stop stop and freeze, and then they'll repeat like their initial conversation. And it's like, oh, they're only programmed to answer certain things, so we have to ask them the right questions to carry on the conversation. And it's like, how did that happen in Robin Williams' version if this wasn't originally a video game but a board game? How were there NPCs, and how did the hunter come in? Because the hunter seemed more cognizant of what he was doing when he came out in the Robin Williams version. And it's, I don't know, it's just like a weird dynamic of going from the Robin Williams version to this version, because one thing I said about the Robin Williams version is it would have been cool to see what he had to go through in the jungle. Like, if they had done a second one with him, is he would have had to re-enter the game, go back into the jungle, and it would have been him kind of teaching everyone, like, how he survived through the whole thing. And it seems like that's kind of what they're doing here, but they do too much emphasis on the video game stuff, instead of just establishing this world of Jumanji. Which they could have easily done by not having the NPC characters know what they were talking about if they start talking about certain things, instead of just being like robotic reloops. They could just be like, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about, or something like that. But no, they basically just kind of established that they're NPCs like you would have in a video game that just repeat dialogue. You could also say, well, this is a video game Jumanji and not the original board game Jumanji, even though the board game birthed the video game. So maybe it's a different jungle than what Robin Williams was in. But no, because they make reference to Robin Williams' character being there. Because when they finally meet up with the boy from 1996 who was pulled into the game and disappeared, he's living in basically this treehouse, and written on one of the walls of the treehouse was, Alan Parrish was here, and somebody looks at him and says, who's Alan Parrish? And the other guy goes, I don't know, apparently he's the one who built all this. They're like, what do you mean? And he's like, this was all here when I got here, you know, this is his house, I'm just living in it, but I have no idea who he is. So basically saying that Robin Williams' character of Alan Parrish was in this same world of Jumanji, going through the same stuff, apparently the same storyline, lived in the same hut, eventually got back out to the real world when the kids rolled the dice, but he makes no mention of the issues with the NPCs or anything like that. And even when the one NPC comes out of the game as the hunter, it just doesn't really work like the NPCs in this one do, where they seem like programs. The hunter and the other one seem cognizant of what he was doing. So that's really my main downfall with it, is it's a bit too video game driven, and that could be to try and focus on the new audience, the younger generation, the millennials, so that they can get into this versus, oh, they just happen to play a board game again. Honestly, it would have been better had the board game just been donated to the school, and they open it up and they're like, well, we're kind of bored not doing anything. You want to play this game? And at first everyone's reluctant to do it. And they're like, come on, what else are we going to do? But that would have been like, had they not been cleaning up this room, if it would have just been like a regular Saturday detention like in the Breakfast Club, where you just sit around in a room doing nothing all day, and they got out this board game and decided to play and were sucked into the game, that would have made a bit more sense. But even then, it probably would have had to go back to the same aspect of the jungle coming out of the game versus them going into the game, so it kind of makes more sense to do the video game. I don't know. But yeah, that's my main gripe with it, is we finally get into the jungle and see what Robin Williams had to go through, and it's nonsensical NPC BS. But like I said, overall, it's an okay movie. It deals with the same concepts a lot of movies do. You're put into a circumstance of being the opposite of who you originally are, and you learn something about yourself and become a better person because of it. And that's basically the movie. So what would I give as far as a star rating? I guess a 3. Like I said, it wasn't a bad movie. It's just that one little aspect of it made me not like certain parts. But then again, the one saving grace of the whole movie was Jack Black. Just him playing a teenage girl who is now in the body of a man and having to learn how to do man things. That little bit of comedy there probably made me laugh more at this movie than anything else anybody else did in the movie. So it gets a little bit back from that it lost from the other bit. So yeah, it balances out to be in the middle of the road. It's a 3. So that's it for this episode. Again, as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share the video. Links are down in the description. Click the bell next to the subscribe button so you get notifications every time I post new content. Until next time, I'll see you after the credits.